Welcome back to Verde Broadcasting. Ivan and I are currently separated, and it's arguably the greatest tragedy of the whole pandemic. It's just the worst. We have wanted to talk about the films of Andy Sidaris for really quite some time, and it's something I've been trying to arrange for ages. And we probably, we would have done it in the front room, wouldn't we? Really, but those are not the circumstances. So here we are. Talking about the films of Andy Sidaris. I imagine within our user base, a lot of people may not even have clicked on this, but this is something. It's something about which I think we both have a passion.
Got to give it a catchy title, like Andy Sidaris, the man who saved America. Or,
Are these the craziest movies of all time? Oh god, I can't. Just the whole thought of like deliberately cooking up a clickbait thing has sort of made my soul hurt a little bit. Even though I do it from time to time because that shit gets results. But what are you gonna do? We like our Picard video. We called that like Picard is the worst or something, and it got clicks. So so if you don't know who Andy Sidaris is, Andy Sidaris pumped out. I can't remember the exact number, but really quite a number of movies back to back that were on these direct-to-video, direct-to-cable, kind of like sort of smutty. They've got softcore sex. They usually featured kind of Playboy bunnies and stuff, and Playboy models, and some of them crossed over into porn, and some of them I think were in porn originally. I don't know, but they're not pornographic as such. They're kind of softcore sex scenes, but they're sort of like spy action cops and robbers type thrillers for the most part. Is that accurate, right? I think that's kind of fair.
yeah, I think I kind of think in a lot of ways he kind of sums up a lot of the essence of 80s American action. You've got the Cold War, you've got big guns, muscly men, women with big boobs, you've got beaches, bikinis. It's all very kind of macho 80s America kind of stuff going on. And then I think if I remember right, he kind of started off I think he directed like a Super Bowl.
Yes, he was a sports. But just for disclosure, Ivan introduced me to Andy Sidaris. I hadn't heard about him until Ivan showed me, and then I've sort of done a bit of a look. Yeah, he was a director and camera operator in sports coverage. So he used to do kind of NFL and stuff like that, and I think Super Bowls, and used to direct live broadcasts and stuff like that, and then crossed over with his wife, was his producing partner, I believe. And then there was kind of a little group around them shooting on film initially. A lot of these, I don't know if these are available in 16:9 versions. I think they're kind of shot for a television ratio. There are two box sets, and we have what's the one we have? We have twice. We have one each.
Girls, Girls, and G-strings.
Guns, Girls, and G-strings. I think the other one is Boobs, Blood, and Bombs, or something like that. That's the other. So, and they went on until I think the early 2000s, but they start in the 80s. You showed me this, and it's something for which I'm eternally grateful. Could you just tell me how you first saw Andy Sidaris' movies?
Well, I think the first bit of a Sedaris film I saw, I'm pretty sure, is the Frisbee scene in Hard Ticket to Hawaii.
And that's probably the most famous scene, isn't it? Because it's one of those things that gets internet truck.
Yeah, and I think I saw it maybe in a TV Carnage video or something like that. I saw it somewhere, or maybe just kind of early internet YouTube stuff. And it was like, wow. This is amazing. I need to see this film. This is brilliant. And then I think I was looking at, in the good old days of kind of mid-2000s internet nerd web pages, before they all got bought up by 5 or 6 different massive corporations who have huge legal liabilities. But one of them was like, this guy called Andy Sidaris, there's a new DVD collection of like 12 of his films, and it costs $8. And they had a little clip from Hard Ticket to Hawaii, and I was like, oh my gosh, $8 for 12 films, easiest decision I've made in my life. So then watched Hard Ticket to Hawaii. It was great. Then went through to all the others, Picasso Trigger and Yeah, and it's just this really weird, because, like we said, 80s kind of machismo American action, but then within it, there's obviously, because he's such an auteur, he obviously has interests which he then adds into it. So Hawaii, almost every film is at least set or partially
Molokai Beach specifically is the
Molokai Beach, which was a former leper colony.
Mm.
Yeah, Molokai is where the lepers used to hang out. But then computer hacking.
Yes,
there's a lot of computer stuff, and planes. He loves aviation.
Planes and helicopters, yeah. Which makes you wonder if his cousin had a kind of shipping company or something. He does. He very much likes an in-camera credit sequence as well. Some lots of really great. Because I think Hard Ticket has Hard Ticket. I think is a bunch of shipping crates.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's one. I think it might be Picasso Trigger or Guns, because I'm sure neither of us would like to care to admit this, but they do sort of merge together a bit when you've watched enough of them. But I think Guns is all kind of green computer screen text. It's all he does that because Ivan and I have a in front of the green chair in our house, which appears in lots of videos on his channel, is a footstool I bought, and there's a sketch pad in there, and Ivan and I had this kind of unified Sedaris theory page. Do you remember in the back? So we were writing down the Sedaris tropes and trying to kind of link everything together. Because the really important thing to mention here, without going off to a track, is that they do exist in a shared universe.
Yes.
So it's a shared continuity that has recurring characters, sometimes minor characters. It has returning villains. One of which, the kind of Phantom of the Opera guy, that he comes back in a movie like years and years later. He's in it a couple of times, I think. There's a few actors, so like Sid Haig and Ken Leong and stuff are in it, and so on and so on.
Yeah, Danny Trejo.
Yes.
Is it Julie Strain?
Julie Strain, yeah, she's in some of the later ones. She was married to Kevin Eastman of Ninja Turtles fame once, apparently. There you go.
Well, that's the thing. It's and that. The fact it's a shared universe, because most of them work. I forget what the organisation is called, but there's a kind of spy organisation.
It's like Shield or whatever, isn't it? It's like Bubes, like capital B dot capital E dot capital W dot capital B. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean? Like, it's like your kind of Shield type thing.
And that's the thing. And I was trying to explain to someone recently, just be like, this didn't happen. Before kind of Marvel, pretty much, you didn't get that. You got sequels to films, and then you got kind of serial film characters like James Bond. You didn't have a world where characters would dip in and dip out, and and that's the thing. When you first see the films, you're just like, wow, this is all one world,
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're feeling less kind, you can say it as a one film, but but absolutely, like, people come back, characters come back. What's the very very first one? I'm bringing my phone up because I can't remember, but hold on, just a second. Okay, so just interestingly, in the film MASH, he was uncredited football choreographer.
Oh,
so there you go. Malibu Express. So in the first movie, Malibu Express, one of the main characters are kind of like... Because one thing that Andy Sidaris clearly really loves is James Bond. So the whole kind of glamour of the Bond world is in it. The spy thing is in it. The kind of slightly Spectre-ish thing is in it. Gadgets for days. That's where the Frisbee thing comes from. Gadgets, wacky guns, like remote control bomb cars, like all that stuff. In Malibu Express, so it's a boat called the Malibu Express, and in Hard Ticket, which is the next one, I think Hard Ticket's the next one along, they queue up their shared universe in a really interesting way, because the main character from Malibu Express isn't in Hard Ticket. And they show a poster for Malibu Express in Hard Ticket, and they point it, right? And they, like, let's just call him John Spy. They go like, oh yeah, John Spy moved away. They made a movie about his life and he starred in it. And it kind of tees up the first film exists as a fiction within the universe that then carries on. And keep it in mind, like, because they churned these out, right? They churned them out. I don't mean this in a bad way, but they share a lot of pornography in terms of their production scale. Like they made lots of them very quickly, and cheaply, and they all went to like I think Americans quite often, when I've talked about Sedaris, or we talked about Sedaris, they kind of say, "Oh, I watched that on Bravo," and I think it's the same Bravo here, and kind of late night, smutty kind of shit. But hey, look, there are some models from porn in it, and Playboy and Penthouse and whatever. But they had that kind of production cycle of porn in that they're kind of, buy them low, stack them high. Quick. But sorry, go on. Sorry.
I was just going to say, in a lot of ways, the person who he reminds me the most of is Russ Myers. Two people who obviously have really singular visions of the kind of movies they want to make and have uber smutty sensibilities, which are the vehicle for them to make their movies.
It's kind of halfway between Russ Myers and Corman, I think. Because, Corman just made them no matter what on Quick and Dirty, whereas Russ Meyer definitely had a kind of a vision. The thing is with these is something that we talk about a lot, like at home, if you're ever interested in the kind of things that Ivan and I talk about, two men in their mid-30s sat around in their shared house. It is like there is genuine, legitimate auteurship in Andy Sidaris, and if you watch the Andy Sidaris films, which are considered kind of not art or low art or whatever, there's a very clear auteurship. There's a very clear repetition of intent, style, and kind of storytelling throughout it. And it's a fucking long cycle of movies because they stopped because he died. Like he'd probably still be doing them, you know what I mean? And they were still kind of knitted together even at the very end when they got. I will check when the last one happened.
Yeah. Oh, actually, that reminds me. Another person who's in, I think, one of the films is the wrestler Buff Bagwell.
Yes, I think that might be Return to Savage Beach because that might be the last one. Because there's Savage Beach. And there's Return to Savage Beach, which I think has Buff Bagwell in it, because that's one we watched with our mate Tom.
Yep.
And again, because there are sort of within it, there are sequels. It's kind of like it's sort of like Thor: The Dark World and Thor: Ragnarok, but it's like Savage Beach and Lethal Lady's Return to Savage Beach.
Well, I can't remember. Because there's one that is pretty much set in Nevada, and I love that one because it has the classic hokey kind of financing where there'll be huge scenes of them outside like a hotel in Nevada, and it's like, look at these picturesque swimming pools surrounding this hotel. It would be a great place to have a holiday or honeymoon.
They say there are loads of rooms available at a great price. We should stay the night. And then they have sex, and then they leave.
I think it's because I'm not sure it's Vegas, but I think it's the place that has the London Bridge.
Oh, and that's in wherever it's in Nevada where they rebuilt London Bridge, and that's in I want to say Smoking the Bandit or Cannibal Run or something as well, isn't it? The place with it's in more mainstream. I can't remember what someone will know. It's in a more kind of mainstream.
Yeah, more respectable.
More respectable, yeah. Because I will say that about this because you get the box set. Just to be clear, they're kind of they're formatted 4x3. If you want to watch the Andy Sidaris movies, they seem to be out of copyright, or at least no one's enforcing that IP, so you can watch them on YouTube, which is how we were able to stream one. And Ivan and I want to do. This is a tee up to a kind of season we wanted to start doing picture-in-picture commentaries to Andy Sidaris movies because the world needs to know. The internet does sort of have you covered, I think. So if you want to go watch them, you can. But I do kind of... The great thing about the Andy Sidaris movies is that when you explain them to people, it does sound like you've made it up. It's like...
So, right, there are these two big-boobed... flight police,
kind of helicopter police,
Molokai Island, and they take down international drug cartels. Chinese arms dealers,
And then they met
giant poisonous snakes.
giant poison snakes, experimental weapons. One time they met that that story about the Japanese soldier who doesn't know the war's over. Well, they met him because that even has the kind of war flashback. So I'm trying to bring up the Sedaris filmography because my phone's being
True, actually. Asia as well. There's quite in that very 80s American way. There's a fascination with Asia.
Yeah, you totally get like, and the 80s ninja assassins and all that kind of shit like comes up quite a bit. Like it's kind of we've talked about this before. I was going to get myself some more of this booze. We talked about this before, where one of my beefs kind of with, like, say, Grindhouse, the Tarantino and Rodriguez thing, is that it was pining for a type of film that never existed. There's an era that existed, but it's a film that never really existed. So I kind of like Planet Terror because it leans into that and it makes the film that the trailers promised you. Right? That's no film was ever like that, but it makes that film for you. Whereas Tarantino Death Proof, which is Tarantino's worst film by quite a distance, and I'm not particularly deferent to Tarantino, kind of recreates the era faithfully by being uneven and boring. Whereas
it has a weird. Okay, yeah, we're talking about Sedaris. It has a weird black and white scene that just not seen a whole chunk of the movie in black and white that just stops for no discernible reason. It's just like, oh, we're in black and white now. Okay.
Well, that whole first bit's in that kind of gaudy 60mm colour thing, and it's like that's what they filmed first and did the rest later. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to bolt the rest on later. It's dreadful. It's a dreadful film. Well, my point being, when people kind of parody sort of straight to video 80s stuff, they because there's so much of that around at the moment with like synthwave and mullet wigs and stuff, and they kind of do all that. And it's kind of like, yeah, but none of those actually existed, and this is the place where they did, because like Commando was close, and that wasn't really that, and like Rambo wasn't really that, and a bunch of stuff wasn't really that. But in the world of like straight to video and straight to cable, like it 100% exactly was that. The exact thing existed, and presumably, I mean, it's kind of like presumably these were very profitable because it was sort of like buy them low, stack them high,
No, yeah, he must have found a good market for it, and in a lot of ways, that's because when you kind of think of some of the films that are remembered fondly, like the kind of the Ninja Squad films and stuff like that, they're awful. They're just awful films. And Sedaris films are, they're not highbrow, but they're really watchable. They're infectious kind of films. Whereas a lot of the kind of classic schlocky stuff you watch and then you kind of go, this is really uninteresting. I can... Yeah.
Keep going. My backlight went, don't worry, keep going, I'm listening.
But a lot of those kind of classic films that you see, when you finally watch them, you realise that the 2-minute clip you watched was all that film was worth.
Yeah, that's the best bit in the whole film, because a lot of them it's kind of like the thing with the Grindhouse thing. So many Grindhouse movies, like in reality, are really fucking dreary, man. Like there's something Duncan Rule and I talk about a lot. Like there's a whole lot of fucking nothing happening for a whole section of them. They're just really fucking boring. Like loads of them are great, but like I think it's a thing with a lot of the there's a fondness for the canon oeuvre, the Golan and Globus era. But watching most of those, fucking hell, like it's a chore. Because like the odd one, sort of like Invasion USA is a lot of fun, but it drags in a bunch of places. And something like talking to canon movies, like a Death Wish 3, like it's great. But so many of them, there's so much kind of landfill and shovelware in those. Whereas I find with the Sedaris movies, firstly, I mean, all this stuff's usually quite short, and the Sedaris movies kind of feel that. They fulfill that without any question. That's fine, but they seem to have like quite a lot of character in them, and they are nakedly cynical. There's no pun not pun not intended, but they're nakedly cynical. Like there's just like titties and blood, but it's just the inventiveness in them and the fact that they are kind of nicely paced, and they do go somewhere. It's sort of like they go and kill the bad guy, and along the way someone's going to fill a blimp full of polar bears or whatever stupid shit is like going to happen.
And when you do get long, protracted, boring, let's say boring scenes, it's not like a lot of schlocky films where it's like, oh, it's a 5-minute scene of two people talking in a white room in a really uninteresting way. In a Sedaris film, it's like, oh, now you get to see 3 minutes of a fixed-wing plane flying over the sea because Sedaris loves planes.
Yes.
There's a reason for his kind of drawn-out thing.
I can't remember one of I think it's in Hard Ticket, but it's definitely one of the earlier ones where they all hang out at Sandy's Brasserie, and it's all the same restaurant.
Sandy's Brasserie. Well, I think it might be so. Yeah, that's like a location. It's like a sitcom, like kind of Alf's Diner. It's like, oh yeah, we're all going to Sandy's.
It's Central Perk, and it's sort of like, oh well, because they'll talk about the spy data that's in the microfilm, but they'll all order from the reasonably priced fixed menu that's available Monday to Thursday, or whatever. It's got this whole kind of like vibe of like, oh okay, and again from time to time, I will say that as well, because I don't know, and again it's married to sort of a naked cynicism, but if there is a dialogue scene, it will be in like a sort of Asian inspired sort of dojo room or something. There's all these great, I think there's a lot of links to local hotel businesses and suites and things, but you get that kind of...
Or it'll be two topless women in a hot tub.
Yes, there is. There's a great bit in Hard Ticket where they discuss the ongoing situation. It's just two chicks with massive norks like talking about microfilm in a hot tub, and it's broken up with loads of kind of softcore sex, like all the time. There's all the kind of softcore sex, kind of penthousey. I mean, none of it's like, it's totally, because that's what it is. It's kind of like bargain basement titillation, but it's just got so much personality in it, I think. There's so much comes through it in terms of what Andy Sidaris was all about. Like, so in terms, do you like helicopters and James Bond? Like, a lot. It really comes out.
But actually, that's a good point, yeah, because as someone known for not liking James Bond, what is it about Sedaris films that you do like?
It's all better. It's more honest. It's all better.
There's only one holiday destination. It's always Hawaii.
It's always more like that, except for that one time it was Nevada. I like its corniness, man. I like how it doesn't, because part of my, hey, I'm not against things taken themselves too seriously, but part of my problem with Bond is like I just find it all a bit po-faced. And I've talked to Duncan about this. It's a bit kind of po-faced. It's a bit kind of stuffy, and this is like, in James Bond, it's kind of, particularly the more recent ones, it's kind of like, oh well, we've pared it back to now you've just got a radio and a gun and a shoe with poison in it. And it's like, fuck that, I want a remote control car with a bomb on it, or like a skateboard assassin, or a razor. Because the great thing about the razor blade frisbee, like if someone is like, there's a scene in a movie where someone throws a frisbee at someone, it's got razor blades in it and it cuts their neck, and you kind of think of like, sting, and like it comes out and it's not that. It's just a bunch of razor blades stuck in a frisbee and chucked at someone. I don't know. There's a kind of like, it's this kind of like corny B movie honestness, and the fact they're short as well. It's like an hour and 20. You know what I mean? They very rarely dent the 90-minute mark. You know what I mean? Because again, it's rusk, right? It's sausage meat, but it's rare that kind of production has so much personality in it.
Exactly. To quote The Independent, your films are so much sausage meat, and it really is that. It's like, yeah, we're churning these out, they'll make money, but I want to say, I don't think he has something to say, but there are things he wants to kind of portray and talk about. They're not issues, they're beaches.
He's enjoying himself, right? Like they're massively indulgent, but in kind of like a sort of like loud-shirted yachty Jimmy Buffett kind of a way, instead of a
really curvy Jimmy Buffett, yeah. And the small bits I've seen him talk about it is very much like that. It's like, yeah, I want big, beautiful women in my movies. Dude. I want to be doing it on a sunny beach.
Yeah, when you see him talk, he doesn't even try and hide it, and that's why. Because when you see like, this is the thing, like taking like a Paul Anderson in real life, not the Paul Thomas Anderson, I don't know what I'm saying, the Paul W.S. Anderson, when he talks about his films, like, and he's supposed to be like, by the way, like Paul W.S. Anderson is supposed to be just like the nicest geezer. Like, he's supposed to be so nice, and I kind of feel bad getting a bit. But they always do that thing where they have to wheel him out so he can talk about what a fan he is of the subject matter. Oh, he's done this and he's done that, and then all the actors come out and pretend that they're fans of the game and whatever. And you know, Fox has told them they got to say they're into this game or this franchise, and they've made them read a Wikipedia about fucking Xenomorphs or whatever. You name it. Whereas Sedaris' thing is just going like, I like tits. I want titties and blood and guns and speedboats, and that's how we're going to do it. And that's why it doesn't feel it just feels so authentic on that level. Like,
and that's what I really love about his wife being the producer as well. It's like, oh yeah, he's a married man. Him and his wife are in business together, doing these really cynical, titillating kind of action movies. And it's like, oh, it's kind of sweet.
Because you know what? The dude is dead, right? If there was going to be a bunch of Weinstein-y shit, we would have heard it, I kind of think. And he was in business. There might be. I don't want to... But I don't want to sort of like... And if someone comes to me with concrete proof, I'm not going to double down and go, the man was a saint! But like, he's been dead for years. Like, he was in production with his wife. And they went on this stuff together, and they, like you say, these kind of titillating exploitation movies, and they don't feel, because they don't have like rape, for example, because quite a lot of these exploitation films have like rape and sexual violence. You know what I mean?
And actually, that's something we haven't talked about, because I think we take it so for granted. But one of the really big things in this is a lot of the action heroes in these films are women. It's not that. These women are just kind of standing in the background so that people can look at them while the male characters are talking. It's like, oh no, the female, very large-breasted women are the action heroes in these films who are taking out the baddies. And so it is women with agency,
That is important. I mean, it's kind of it's women with agency, and also the sex that's usually in it, because there is a lot of sex. I mean, it's perfect for a teenager, someone as jaded as our age group. We're not going to wank to this, but, for you bits. There's a lockdown on. But it's the sex within it, like, because quite a lot of exploitation stuff has like rape, kind of sexual violence. Like, I don't recall that particularly in the Sedaris movies, and quite often what you get is the sex scenes are very kind of, they're all... I think there's a couple of threesomes and stuff, but it's like saxophone. You know what I mean? Like, it's like saxophone. And
it'll be kind of gels like we have.
Yes.
Saxophone music.
Yeah. And
then a shower or a
yeah, exactly. Or like sex on beach a lot. Because they're quite like... I don't want to... They're usually quite tender. They're not mean. They're not mean sex scenes. They're kind of quite tender, and they're quite loving, and it's not necessarily monogamous or anything. And there is quite a lot of like, oh, I liked how you saved me today. Let's do a sex type stuff. But usually it is that, and quite often the women are in charge in terms of the action and stuff. And quite often, when the men they're having sex with are the ones they did the big shooting action scene with together. It's not usually a case of one saving the other, and then they have sex. It's like they all had a big gunfight together, and I guess all that murder made them horny, and then they go and so that kind of stuff. Because that's the thing. Because if you look at a lot of like Dario Argento, for example, is a very lauded director, but there's a fuckload of like rape and sexual violence in his movies, and I'm not condemning Dario Argento, but that's something that's considered this kind of artful, the giallo movement and everything else. But there's loads of kind of nasty shit in those, and like these are kind of they're quite sweet a lot of the time.
Yeah, and you mentioned Death Wish 3 earlier. Michael Winner is another,
the king of fucking cinematic rape, wasn't he? So much rape.
And that's the thing, because we didn't mention that. We've been kind of thinking about doing this video, but that kind of female action lead isn't something I think either dawned on either of us, because we take it for granted with Sedaris films. It's like, oh yeah, well, of course they are. But at the time, especially, we were watching these films kind of in the 2000s, but at the time, I'm sure it looked even weirder, with these films where it's like, oh yeah, well, they're the lead, and yeah, they're going to shoot Danny Trejo because he's smuggling cocaine into Hawaii or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a shame he's dead because well, I say it like there's been some sort of huge Sedaris resurgence.
There will be, Ivan, after this.
There will be.
There will be.
But I would like if he had got the chance to kind of see his films being reevaluated. I don't think he would be going, finally, my genius is being recognised.
Yeah, because the dude made his money. Right, the dude made his. Because there's so many stories, like tragic stories. Because even, for example, like John Carpenter is someone who's done perfectly well for himself, and he appears to be comfortable. He's got a nice retirement. Like, as far as we know, he sits around smoking weed and playing Call of Duty all day. But John Carpenter was on such a pedestal that, and I've got to admit, there's a number of his films I don't like, and I'm sure it's the same for you. But he was put on such a pedestal that when we talk about John Carpenter, we always talk about when it went wrong and when it went bad, and like good John Carpenter and bad John Carpenter. And even when the movies, and from John Carpenter's perspective, and I've heard him talk about this, it's like, from his perspective, even when he, the things that we all laud now, that we all love and put on a pedestal, critics hated, like made shit, like, because, Halloween made great box office, but a bunch of other stuff didn't. Like, The Thing was a huge failure. It went against E.T., studio picture for Universal. It's kind of lauded now, but John Carpenter always kind of says, oh, well, good for you, but it did nothing for me. Because
like Big Trouble in Little China, wasn't that his most expensive film at the time?
I think that was another. I think that was also Universal, I want to say. But again, yeah, it was a kind of script that was already around, and they retooled it, and they sunk all this money into it, and it was a big flop.
Yeah,
and we all love it. We're still talking about
fantastic
it.
Film.
Yeah, and so my point being that someone of John Carpenter's kind of repute and level, he had to live through that, whereas Sedaris was at such a kind of low budget, no one even thought to critically appraise his films in any kind of lasting way. I remember when when I, back in the day when I was doing my degree, you would go to the library of your list of stuff, and you would literally look on the index on the computer and find books that mention the thing, the topic, and you go to the book and go to the index. It's the same for any kind of academic research. You go to the index and try and find you wouldn't find. It was hard enough for me to find stuff about John Carpenter, keeping in mind a lot's been written in the intervening years and there's more acceptance of that kind of geek shit now. But this is me trying to research 16, 15 years ago. Like, it was hard enough finding kind of good meaty stuff on Carpenter. No one was writing about Andy Sidaris because it was just so under the radar, and it made its money because it's like, well, those aren't films. Those aren't films. They go to Bravo or to tape. That's kind of smart that you get in Blockbuster or what have you. Those aren't movies, and he never had to deal with that because, and presumably, he made so many of them. They clearly made him money because he wouldn't have been enabled to keep making them. He's not like someone who had a kind of oil fortune or something. You know what I mean?
Well, that was one of the things as well, because when I first saw his films, I kind of thought, well, he must be from Hawaii, or he must at least be based in Hawaii, because all his bloody films are set there. But then he's from Louisiana, and I think he carried on living in Louisiana, but would then fund all these films in Hawaii. And can't blame him, but also it kind of breaks that kind of belt and braces feel of kind of B movies where you think, well, they film what they do where they can because it all saves money and stuff. And it's like, well, no, he seems to have, for whatever reason, took the choice, I want to make films in Hawaii. And it could have been a financial thing because there's a bunch of money coming in for him for doing it, or it could be he just loves Hawaii and it meant he got a free flight there.
And I don't think either was sort of pretending this was some kind of like artistic enterprise that someone kind of bled their heart out. Dude, it's nakedly cynical. They know it, but they had fun with it. And it's kind of like, yeah, the dude got to have month-long holidays probably 6 times a year, but he flew out to Hawaii. He sat in like, what's his name's bistro and looked at tits. Like, fair enough. Like, absolutely. But it's just, it wasn't then necessary. Pardon me, there's a bit of a whiskey belch. I'm not cutting it out. It wasn't necessary then, and for example, to make it a shared universe. Because I think it's really important for something that basically exists as on a number of levels, like really base gratification. There's a load of like legwork put in. There's a load of like kind of plotting. You know, it all links together. Like, you know, okay, no, like all the girls of massive tits didn't have to like meet Thanos or anything. Like, you know what I mean? It would have been wicked if we could get that. The Sedaris Endgame, the 2.5 hour Sedaris Endgame.
I think who would play the big evil? Oh, what you call it? I've forgotten his name. The guy with the big chin.
Oh, Robert Z'Dar. Oh,
Robert Z'Dar.
Oh my God! I mean, it's only an accident that Robert Z'Dar wasn't in, and he said because like he's very much of the stock. Because again, yeah, Danny Trejo, Sid Haig, Ken Leong, Al Leong, sorry, and a few others. Like, yeah. Now I'm sort of thinking, was Bob Z'Dar in a fucking Sedaris?
Yeah, I'm starting to think maybe it was. Yeah, you
Let's
have
do an on air. I'll tell you what, I've been leaning a lot into the phrase "as live" recently. Because something that we've always done really is done things as live, and as an editor's perspective, as the person who edits his content, like it's very lazy. But we do things as live, and yeah, no, I'm just lazy. I'm just going to go Robert Z'Dar because Robert Z'Dar died recently.
Well, I'll say quickly while you're oracling there. Also, I just thought while you were saying about the shared universe, it was also in a format where it was highly unlikely the people watching these films would be able to watch all of them. You know, it isn't a world of collected DVD collections, not necessarily even films that you'd be seeing on VHS, probably films you'd be seeing on cable and you'd catch on a Friday night. So even more the fact that him doing a shared universe it seems like such a weird choice.
And you as a kind of like, let's face it, a Bravo channel onanist is going to go like, wait a minute, these are by the same director. I better start taping these. Like, you know what I mean? Well, if anything, perhaps that you tape them and then realise they're all by the same director afterwards. Yeah, unclear. Shockingly, if you Google Robert Z'Dar, Andy Sidaris, there's a lot of crossover. Particularly, there's a movie, it seems, Elixir, which has Robert Sedaris and Julie Strain in it. See, there's a website called Hard Ticket to Home Video. And there's an obituary to Robert Z'Dar, but I think that's just they've perhaps named their thing appreciatively to Sedaris rather than that being a thing. Could be wrong, but because Robert Z'Dar, man, Robert Z'Dar. I won't sidetrack you for too long, but he was in the Maniac Cop series. It was like Bruce Campbell, you know, it was kind of mainstream-ish, but he was in Samurai Cop, you know, like Robert Z'Dar, and he was a weird-looking dude. I mean, man, I'm trying to think if no, he's not in a God. Someone at home's going like, he fucking is. He was the Thanos. He turned up. He collected the infinity boobs or whatever.
I can really imagine that. Yeah, the infinity boobs. What about the infinity bikinis? Maybe.
Oh yeah.
They flex them on the beach while they're swimming together.
And he has to get the 5 women to put them on to make his powers. And when he finally collects the 5 infinity boobs, it allows him to rent unlimited helicopters, presumably. Unlimited lunches at the bistro.
I control all aviation machinery.
I get 2 for 1 lunches at Sandy's Brasserie. Monday through Thursday. Yeah. It's I implore anyone to check out, and I think this is the what I will say, Ivan, is that something that you and I have discussed privately before is that there are certain things I've done for the internet with me and with you as well, where they haven't got numbers, that people haven't watched them, but I enjoy doing them so much I want to do them anyway. And the idea of this is to tee off a kind of Sedaris season. So if this gets 300 views and then we do like a commentary for Hard Ticket and 4 people watch it, that will make me just double down and go it even harder. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's the thing. Yeah, because yeah, there are things which don't get talked about, and after a while, um, yeah, you have to kind of go, well, let's forget about that, or I should be the person talking about it because someone should be.
Yeah.
And yeah, Sedaris is kind of that. It's like, well, he deserves some credit, and he doesn't seem to really get any.
Yeah, agreed. Like, I don't think, for example, let's say, for example, like the sexual politics of like the average Sedaris movie. I mean, luckily, no one's going to watch this, but like, I catch a lot of shit for it. I don't think, and I've got a feeling you might be on my wavelength here. I don't think any given Sedaris movie, the sexual politics, despite the film being far more explicit, the sexual politics are not as nasty as, say, Sucker Punch.
Oh yeah,
Because Sucker Punch has that kind of gross, rapey objectification thing in it, and like the control of women, and just it's like the fact that like
I think the problem with picking Sucker Punch is that we're not kind of the kind of big-brained geniuses that can appreciate Sucker Punch.
It's true.
For the many levels of irony and subtext that are going.
I should have prefaced just by saying, like, clearly as someone such as myself, and I will speak for you, yourself, not smart enough to understand Sucker Punch. That's why I would say that. I'm just not smart enough to understand Sucker Punch. You know, I'm just a normal sized brain, subnormal brain, if anything, because I just didn't understand Sucker Punch. But it's not like, it's not mean, it's not nasty like Sucker Punch. You know what I mean? Like, Sucker Punch is kind of nasty, and like these aren't. It's just kind of titties and spy adventures, you know.
And in, you know, to be fair, that is a very good pick of an example, because that's another film about sexualized women having action agency. You know, they're the leads in an action movie, like in, you know, a lot of Sedaris films. But the way that is dealt with is completely different, because in one they're all going to get lobotomized after being abused as children and seeing their sister die. In the other, they're just in Hawaii having a good time, and then they save the world every now and again.
Foiling spies or whatever. Yeah. Smash. Like, I just, I know we're going to get probably get some shit for that, but fuck it. But yeah, you know, it never feels like mean. It never feels mean. Like it's dumb sometimes, quite a lot. It's dumb, and it's kind of sexy dumb. It's kind of like pin-up dumb. You know, it's kind of like trashy. Sure, it's kind of cheap. Definitely. It's never mean. Never feels like evil. I mean, you could definitely. There are certainly people who point to it and kind of say, "Let's exploitative and whatever." But it's kind of like,
and if people, you know, it's completely fair to say it's exploitative, because it's definitely
it is categorically exploitation. It is categorically exploitation, but it's kind of at the softer end of that. I don't ever feel like, because again, like, look at Dario Argento. Like, it's fucking nasty and rapey, like, a lot of time. And hey, I'm a fan of Dario Argento, man. Like, I like the Giallo movement. I think they're really interesting movies. But like, you know, I never really feel like that watching a Sedaris film. You know?
I think, in a way, it kind of reminds me of the Marvel swimsuit editions.
Right.
Where it's like, this is stupid. It's obviously a really cynical attempt at titillation, but it's also kind of stupid enough that it's kind of harmless. And I have more problems with the Marvel swimsuit editions than I do Sedaris films. But yeah, it's that kind of like, oh, what?
Are you in the 2018 Megaverse on Facebook? Did we? I think is that one that we're both in? 2018 Megaverse.
Don't think so. No.
There was one from I think it was Megaverse today. I think it was a Gary Leach kind of portrait, and it was Judge Anderson, but I think for the Star, not the Sport. So it's like it's Judge Anderson with the shoulder pads and then naked, and then a tiny little kind of panties with a justice shield on it, and then ghosts going woo and covering her boobs, and it is super weak ass trashy. Like it's just gross. It's kind of like, well, what's that for? You know what I mean? Like, because I hate when people say things like people are like, you're a prude. And it's kind of like, you wouldn't say that if you saw my browsing history. But there's a time and a place. You know what I mean? Though there is a time and a place. Like where you don't need to do something. It's just gross if you do. It's just kind of scuzzy. You know what I mean?
And that's what's nice about Sedaris, because there are no airs and graces. It's like, these films are what they are. We're not a bloody newspaper getting pin-ups of comic characters, or and we're not kind of big budget Hollywood films sexualizing weird schoolgirl stuff in crazy Second World War dream sequences.
But it's really the thing is about schoolgirl Barbies in Sucker Punch is that it's really, really clever. Because the thing is, right now, see, Ivan and I watched Sucker Punch together, and when I was watching it, I looked across at Ivan and I looked at his face. I looked at the shapes his face was making, and I went to myself, Ivan doesn't get it. He just doesn't understand. I turned to him, I said, Ivan, you see what's happening is that's a dream, because actually there are two places, and there's the real place, there's the dream place, and bad things happen in the real place, so she's dreaming the cool thing.
Yeah.
And Ivan said to me, he turned to me and said, Richard, that's blown my mind. None of this, just to be clear, because this is the internet, none of this actually happened.
I went like this. Ivan was. It's like a mushroom cloud out of my head.
Ivan was wearing a very solid bowler hat, and the hat went woo because his mind was blown by the just intense cleverness of Sucker Punch.
I think, if I remember Sucker Punch rightly, there's also a curtain raise to show how it's all theatre, like dance is theatre.
Because it was like a dream in her head or whatever. Like, it's not real. Like, she was just thinking about it because it was a dream, because bad things were happening in real life. Oh man, it's intensely clever.
I think I should watch that again.
I
really hate that.
No, you really shouldn't. I can't remember when Sucker Punch came out. Like, did you and I watch that together for the first time? Because I feel like not when we. I think because it's obviously before we lived together. But I feel like you and I might have, when you used to come over mine, I used to go over yours. I feel like something we watched together.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell at this point, but there is, because you and I lived together for so long. There are so many films I remember my jaw dropping to when you were in the room. That's like, I don't know.
Some bad ones, definitely. I might have watched that on some sort of illegal streaming when it came out, because I had so much invested in that film.
Ivan,
I was so I know. It was a different world. That would have been
true.
2009.
Space Year 2009. Yeah, I mean, you were you just walked out of Iron Man, and you were like, I need to. I can't believe I can't just watch Sucker Punch now. If only there was some way for me to steal this from the internet, I could,
Well,
now.
At that time, I was in a town where to go to the cinema, I think, cost about £2.70. However, I would have probably had to wait 4 months until I could see Sucker Punch.
Oh, yeah, well, that's why you would have pirated it. I don't blame you. But it's £2.40 for a film, but you just don't have any internet. 56k, bro. Just a sidebar, Ivan. I meant to tell you this, if you don't mind me telling you it on air. As live.
Well, let's find out.
As live. Yeah, I know. This is when you kind of go like, dude, cut that the fuck out. No, you won't. I don't think you will. This doesn't reflect bad on you at all. So Mark,
have I got hepatitis C?
A, B, and C. You've got
the triple.
You've got the whole Jackson 5. Mark Price was on yesterday by recording, but this is going to be released God knows when. So Mark was on talking to me about Star Trek 5. Mark directed Colin, and you told me that you saw, you met Mark at Aberystwyth Uni, Aberystwyth, but when he was screening Colin. Was it at the uni or just the town?
It was at the art centre, which was part of the campus.
Yeah, so I said to Mark, I was like, oh man, oddly enough, like Ivan said to me that he met you at a screening at ABBA years ago about Colin, because I was saying to Mark I saw Colin years before I met him. And he kind of went like, oh yeah, I won't remember that, because I was drunk every time I went to that uni. So it's like every time I went to that uni, I was fucking pissed. I was like, I think that was all, I think that was off air. It was before I pressed go on that episode. But he was just like, I was drunk every time up.
I saw him and Lloyd Kaufman and Claudio Simonetti from Goblin.
Oh, lovely.
The three celebrities
we
that
have we have your signed Lloyd poster on our living room wall, don't we? In among a Hall of Fame. Oh, dude! Sorry, this is just. We'll get back on topic. Dylan Teague tipped us last week on the stream, on the live stream. It was so nice. He's like, I like your stuff. I was like, no, you don't. I like your stuff. Anyway, Lloyd Kaufman's an interesting one because I think Lloyd Kaufman was working simultaneously to Sedaris.
Yeah.
And he's someone who was doing a completely different thing, if you're familiar with the work of Lloyd Kaufman, because he was more kind of a godfather. He did direct stuff, quite a lot of stuff, but he was like a kind of godfather. He was a producer, along with Michael Hertz. And like Troma seems so kind of scattershot, and I think there is some kind of diagram somewhere of your Corman, your Meyer, and your Kaufman, and your Sedaris. You know what I mean? And I do think out of those group of people, Sedaris is the one that's kind of down there. Because if you're looking at your kind of like Scorsese, Spielberg, Lucas, De Palma, that's the one that people talk about. But at this different end of the spectrum, those are the names I'm thinking of in their little kind of, spectrum.
And I think you're right with Kaufman as well, because, like you say, he made a lot of the stuff, but he felt like a godfather, where it's like, there are people with ideas, I'm going to help them get a movie together, Whereas Sedaris, it's very much, at least feels like the singular vision of a guy and his wife.
Some geezer and his wife. Well, it's the same with, in that kind of group of people, because Corman was a godfather like Kaufman, whereas Meyer and Sedaris were doing their own stuff, whereas, because Corman directed a bunch of stuff and loads of things that are named as Corman. They're not directed by Corman. He stopped doing that quite sort of early on. So I can't remember who directed Death Race 2000, but that's often like, the Roger Corman film. And it's like, well, yeah, like it definitely is a Roger Corman film. It's like how the thing from Another World, the original one, the black and white one. It's like a Howard Hawks movie, and it's not. It's directed by Christian Nibby, but it's like this, or Nibby, or whatever his name is. But it's in the Howard Hawks oeuvre of stuff. So it's like, it's kind of like the one recent example, one very close to our hearts is Dread, because it's directed by Pete Travis, but no one remembers that. Poor old Pete Travis. It's because like Alex Garland hadn't quite stepped up to be the director, and Pete Travis apparently didn't even supervise the edit, which really sucks. But like Pete Travis gets no recognition for that film whatsoever, and he must have made surely quite a lot of contributions to it. You would have thought.
Yeah, no, very true indeed. That's a tough life of these kind of I don't know what you could, well, apart from Godfather, call them kind of people holding the reins, let's say.
Well, that's something that's kind of like on television. It's just a given, the executive producer, because people use showrunner a lot, but like it's not actually a credit. You're executive producer, so. It's more of an American thing, but it's bled over to England. So, like when, particularly Doctor Who, right? Like the showrunners of Doctor Who, and it's always accepted that they're creatively in charge, but they'll be like kind of name writers and name directors and stuff. But the showrunner runs things. And certain movies, like Dread's a good example. Like Alex Garland wrote and exec produced it, so he was running things, and Lloyd Kaufman's a good example. Corman's a good example, people who run things, but then you do have actual auteurs, and something we've talked about a bunch of times is that like Neil Breen is like a legit auteur. If you discuss auteur theory, undeniably, like, because something I find quite funny is that people think auteur, they don't really know what that means. They think it just means really good director, and that's not what that means at all. It's not what it means.
And it's like, no, it does not
Yeah.
have to be clever.
Yeah, it literally is the word author in a different language. Like, it just has to have an. Because Michael Bay, I use this all the time because it's someone I don't like. Michael Bay is unquestionably an auteur. Like, when you watch a Michael Bay film, you get a Michael Bay film. Like, I don't. At no point did I feel the Transformers films were compromised, and it's one of those annoying situations where you kind of wish they were. So, you know, like, what the fuck.
No, and yeah, very much so. And yeah, that's the thing. You get certain people where it's like there's a real vision. It doesn't mean it's a good vision or it's an important vision, but it's like, no, that is a vision.
Yeah.
And there is a certain amount of kind of dignity in seeing that, being like, oh yeah, you know, you can make something and people can acknowledge that that's a film you've made, rather than people that can make any old stuff and you'd never know that, you know, they made one thing or the other.
Well, Tommy Wiseau clearly had a bunch of broken relationships and issues that he carried forward. Like, that film is mad, but like, it's clearly his. And like, oh god, is it something Nguyen who did Birdemic? Like, because
yeah.
In that kind of like slightly exploitative way, they brought him back to do a second one, and I'm a bit icky about him doing a second one because it feels like people with money kind of went, dance monkey dance. But like, if you watch Birdemic, I haven't seen the second one, like, he clearly is trying to do a kind of ecological message. He's very concerned about the planet, he's very concerned about pollution and the disruption of nature. He might be mad. I think the main thing is, I don't think he is mad. I think the main thing is that he doesn't speak. English wasn't his first language. I think that was the big issue there. And I think a lot of the sneering at these kind of directors is based on the fact that they don't speak English as a first language. Like Claudio Fraggrasso. Oh shit. Okay, if I got this wrong, I'm sorry, but I think it's Claudio Fraggrasso that did Troll 2 with his wife, and they did a bunch of stuff in Italy. Like, they were contemporaries of like the Italian kind of giallo directors and stuff. And Troll 2 is when they came to America and did something in English, and of course it's completely broken. It doesn't make any sense. And like, when all these kind of like snarky hipsters wheeled out Troll 2 and took him to screenings, he was, bless him, you see it in that movie Best Worst Movie, he's just going kind of like, I like this film, I thought I did a good job. And it's like, yeah, like, if I made a film in fucking Cambodia, like, you know, not in English, like, yeah, I'd probably fucking suck. Like, if I made a film in English, it would probably suck. But like, let alone in Cambodia or fucking Paraguay or, you know, God knows where. So, you know, it is legit auteurship, and I don't think enough credit is given to that. But I feel like there is that when you go to YouTube Analytics, there's a curve of audience retention, and I feel, Ivan, that you and I have far exceeded the curve of audience retention.
I think we probably have, and sadly, it's just now that I've realised, after you mentioned the environmental message, it reminds me that The Independent, Jerry Stiller film, The Independent, is an awesome film, essentially about a fake Roger Corman.
Yeah.
And that film, being a really fun comedy, has so much to say about the position of the B-movie auteur. And you should all watch it. It's great. Especially if you like B-movies.
That's sat under our television since we moved in, I think. So what you showed me that film, we watched it together. Yeah, it's a wonderful film about Corman/Meyer/Kaufman by proxy. So Jerry Stiller plays a kind of Kaufman, you know, Corman-esque type person. And because one of his movies is called World War III 2.
Yeah.
Like, my favourite joke in that film is like, it's like, okay, because they're going to buy his back catalogue with 35mm, and it's kind of like, okay, we're going to give you, what is it? He goes like, we're going to give you $100 per, and he's like, $100 per movie, and he's like, no, $100 per pound. Because buying like the movies by weight is fucking great to buy the celluloid. It's great. Well, look, I feel like we've kind of ran this out a little bit, man. So I'm going to wrap this up if that's all the same to you.
Cool.
Well, there you go. So this is to kick off a season of Sedaris stuff, and if you don't watch it, we kind of don't care because it's me and Ivan aren't in the same room anymore. So this is how we hang out now, and you have to be sort of dragged into it, kicking and screaming. So Duncan and I already did Hard Ticket.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not against doing hard ticket again, I ain't gonna lie. But the fact is, there's enough
a lot of movies.
there's enough movies per pound for us to sort of dive into the rest. So, man, thank you for coming on. Of course, it feels weird to say that, dude, because we're not in the same house, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. But it's good to see. Normal stuff as usual, man. We're doing live streams every Thursday, so jump on for those. Ivan will jump on for more gaming stuff as and when we have it, but we're going to do some of Sedaris picture-in-picture stuff. So thanks very much. Social media, find us on Habbo Hotel and MySpace. We love you. Goodbye.
Oi.
Boy. Support your 7th or 8th favourite YouTube channel by buying crap, tat, junk, hogwash and filth at redbubble.com/people/Valverde shop.